There it is. You're listening to the Eddie Leeway podcast show. Pay attention to your health. This is Eddie Sutton. Say hello to Doc Ock, people.
Hello, chillin'.
Go and get a checkup.
Can we start that over? I knew that cough was
It may not be Obamacare for much longer. It might be Trump care from what we're hearing.
Nah, well, can we... Have you heard the latest? No, that's actually not going to happen.
That's good.
They tried to rule out Obamacare and they failed. Don't get so happy. Obamacare wasn't really all that.
No, it's up to. Trust me, I know.
Okay. We ready?
Yeah, what are we going to talk about?
Hey, we're back in to the Eddie Leeway show. And I'm the co-host,
Doc Ock, ladies and gentlemen, and this is Eddie Sutton.
and I am more than happy to be here with you today, despite the fact that I've been suffering from a respiratory infection for 3 weeks.
At least you're back. You're not on life support.
Dude, if I was on life support, they would wheel my ass in here in an iron lung, and I would be here just because I said I would.
Well, because this
That's
is
how we roll.
Our HQ, it's Sound Wars Studio. We do have a freight elevator, so we would be able to fit an iron lung in here and wheel it in pretty easy.
Oh, that's nice. Excuse me. Hey, you know what? I was digging into some old shit because after meeting you on the first podcast, and people don't know this, but we really don't know each other. I was doing some online investigation, and there was one interview where you were talking about, and this really caught me. An interview about the Hardcore Chronicles, and you went old school and mentioned David Bowie, respectfully for all that.
The first album I really got turned on to David Bowie was Live at the Tower, Philadelphia. I don't know if it's a real mainstream release, but it came out around 1974, just after the Aladdin Sane and Ziggy Stardust period, which I wasn't really included to, even though I started listening to those records. But that Live at the Tower, Philadelphia was a very capturing moment in my youth.
I'm an Aladdin Sane guy.
There you go.
Even though I'm familiar with all that, I kind of grew up with that guy. I can't remember a time when he wasn't around, right?
Just recently I read Woody Woodmansey's book on the Ziggy Stardust period when he started out in music and then finally got the gig with Bowie, and Mick Ronson came in because Woodmansey and Ronson knew each other before Bowie. Ronson joined Bowie before Woodmansey, and there's your story. You know, so it was a good book. It was definitely a good read. And, you know, of course, I have a David Bowie story, too. You know?
Oh, well, then by all means.
Well, this was probably around 1988. It's Rock Hotel at the Ritz. And Profile Records that night brought David Bowie and Joan Jett to our show. And, you know, they're checking us out. They're at the reserve, one of the reserve tables, checking us out. We're doing our thing. And I said something incredibly stupid. I mean, at the time, AIDS was a very prevalent thing in New York, but it also had a very biased appeal to a lot of people.
I'm getting a bad feeling.
So I was like, you know, I was doing this thing, you know, like, I don't know, everybody say hell yeah, you know, but then I said, you know, anybody, you know, something about like, fuck no to AIDS, and we don't want to be around those people. It just spilled out of me like a typical fucking Queens lunkhead retard, you know, out of his skull saying inappropriate things. And that's when David Bowie said, okay, it's time for me to go.
Oh, man.
You know, but on his way out, you know, somebody called him on it, and he was like, what do you think of Leeway? And he was like, they're legit. They're a real serious New York band. So at least David Bowie acknowledged me once in my life.
Did you ever hear any of the shit that he did with Tin Man?
I did. Ironically, I remember the video because that was shot at the Ritz. I remember seeing that, and I thought it was pretty good stuff.
Oh my God. What was that guy's name? Reeves Gabrels or Reeves Gabrels?
Gabrels. It sounds like something German.
That guy is a mother.
Yeah, it was a technical genius.
I distinctly remember there was a point where I thought the only two guitar players that were left that mattered were Vernon Reid and Reeves.
At that time.
Yeah. Because they were doing some wild shit. And I actually have both of the Tin Man albums with the Sons of Soupy Sales.
Yep. Yeah? Hunt and something.
Let's see, Hunt Sales, and I can't remember the other guy's name either.
Yeah, they were part of like almost that L.A. Underground scene for a period of time. You know, they grew up out there. You know, so they were part of the alternative and punk, but they also became at the same time like renowned session dudes. And that's how they jumped into that whole Tin Machine thing. The other part that I remember, I was living on the Lower East Side at the time, and I forget again who they were playing with, but they were playing with somebody else, and it was at that time that they jumped on and started doing the Tin Machine thing. And, that's how I learned about the Sons of Soupy Sales.
I kind of perceived them as like an art rock thing more than anything, but I distinctly remember getting into like Rollins band's Hot Animal Machine album.
Yeah, I don't know much about it.
Around the same time that I got into Tin Machine, and it seemed like swirling around my head was all this stuff that was like a mixture of hardcore and jazz, if you will, at the same time. And it deeply, it affected me negatively, actually, because the band that I was in wasn't trying to hear that shit, and I was trying to incorporate as much of that shit as I could into my guitar playing, and that didn't go too good.
I liked it. I was like, damn, David Bowie getting hard. You know what I mean? Yeah. And I was like, wow, this is good.
Yeah, if you go on YouTube, there's a Tin Machine live. I think it's in Japan. It's in Japan, I think. And they're playing songs from both the albums. God damn it. Oh, there's even one point where David does a saxophone solo. Yeah. I forgot the motherfucker could play the sax.
David can play sax?
Yeah.
Or something like that?
Yeah. And it's fucking, it will stop your heart. It'll punch you in the heart and call you a bitch and then kick you in the ribs.
Now, the man is an icon. We all know that. You can't, whether you like him or not, you cannot deny the talent and art of David Bowie, because Bowie was the one that really brought in artistic image to music, not just the sound of music. A lot of the bands from back in the day were just a bunch of like sloppy looking dudes, or they had a bit of an image, but there wasn't really much of an art that really kind of imitated and went along with the music until we saw Ziggy Stardust.
Well, I always compare stuff like Slade to David. So Slade, where they were doing very accessible English pop rock, to David, who was doing sort of an artsy thing and doing the whole gender bend.
Yeah, you would call it even foppy. Was an English expression. He was, I know that foppy, term. And then he became this like, he/she that really confused a lot of people. Because I think that's what a lot of people saw. It was so outrageous. You know what I mean?
How much of that do you think was real, though, and how much of that do you think was like shock value?
I think a lot of it was shock value and calculated, but then at the same time, I kind of feel like the need to come out as that flamboyant person at the same time. I just don't know how real his sexuality was, because that's when he came out and saying he was bisexual. I don't know how much of that was really for
I could swear
the
at some
press and attention and shock value versus what.
I could swear at some point I heard him in an interview say, well, I thought I was bisexual.
Because you take Angela Bowie, his wife at the time, she was a pretty opportunistic woman. You know what I mean? And
can we all collectively groan at the at the mention of Angie Bowie?
Angela.
Yeah, I don't think she's looked at too favorably.
No, especially when you're in the pool on tour with the band, fucking your man's security guards, even though your man is locked up in the hotel room with a bunch of lines and some other girl. Yeah.
Scandalous. God damn.
So I would.
What's your problem?
Exactly, man.
Anyway,
don't you know where you're eating?
But to bring it around full circle, it was interesting for me to hear you mention in a very hardcore specific forum, mention David Bowie and then remind all them chillin' out there, and I specifically said chillin'. Remember where this music came from.
Yes.
And I don't mean to sound like, Uncle Bob sitting here on his stool smoking his pipe, reminding you of the old days. But you know what? When you become an actual musician, you're going to do that anyway.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
That's what your musicians that you idolize do.
If you don't do it, you're just a fucking perpetrating fraud.
You suck.
You're just a fraud.
I mean, any musician worth his salt
has to do a little bit of school.
Yeah. Even there are some musicians that I kind of question. Honestly, I read Steve Jones' book, Lonely Boy, and I think we mentioned that in a previous podcast.
We did.
And he very surprisingly names bands that were not even close to punk. And I liked these guys, and I had no problem with listening to all of this stuff. And it just, you know what? That's a theme, though. When I meet musicians from every genre of music, they always surprise me with the stuff and they could be the hardest of the hardy hard. And they always say, well, I also listen to this.
I think the majority of these, like, grindcore and death metal dudes from Scandinavia or Europe are listening to a lot of like symphonic shit. Like they'll probably tell you, yes, I'm a very big fan of Wagner.
No, it's not true cult with the V and the umlauts over the you. You Swedish people, I love you. Anyway, but that just actually reminds me, like, I was listening to. Maybe I shouldn't mention the guy's name, but I'm such a fan, Jamie Josta. I'm listening to his podcast the other day, and
what's up, Jamie?
I love that guy. I can't honestly say I'm familiar with his bands that much, but his podcast is where I know him from, and he's ball of energy, love him. But he goes into this talk about grindcore and hardcore and metalcore and what is Black and Death, and my head starts to hurt when I try to remember what distinguishes one subgenre from another. Do you tune down to C flat, or do you tune down to D? And is that what distinguishes you? And
are you really thinking that hard when you're actually creating this music, or are you just going with the flow?
I think kids. Look, I gotta be honest. When we were kids, right? The first time I heard the term death metal was used only to distinguish itself from what was black metal, right? Because kids, and I know this for a fact because I've spoken to them, kids nowadays say, well, bands like Merciful Fate and Venom are not black metal. Well, they were back then. Okay?
The originators of black metal.
They were back then. Okay, let's just call it. And
before that, there was only one band that was kind of like that, and they were called Coven. And it wasn't even...
By the way, I have that album.
That shit is comical.
Yeah,
So you can't
Witchcraft Reeps Souls or something like that. Anyway, so...
It should be called Witchcrap.
It sounds like Jefferson Airplane with satanic lyrics.
Yeah, it's some, like Anton LaVey promo vehicle.
I don't hate it as much as you do. I actually found a couple of songs on there that I liked.
I'm just critiquing. I'm not hating.
And by the way, the singer, Jinx Dawson, I think she's still alive. And she's one of those weird people who has figured out how to drink from the fountain of youth, because she looks 40 years younger than
Good
she
for
is.
her. She's definitely not... Go ahead.
She's got some awesome gels on her photos that blur her image. Because I saw recent pictures like 10 years ago and she was still hot as fuck.
What she could do is maybe share some of that with that guy that goes around calling himself Thor.
Oh, shit.
Because that dude looks like an 80-year-old guy.
Bringing it back.
In like a Roman medieval chest plate.
I still
and a 99-cent wig.
I still to this very day thank God for the existence of Thor and the Great Cat.
And the funny thing is,
because those two have provided me with so much entertainment over the years,
yes,
and joke fodder.
But this guy is so old now that when he looks like he can't get out of his own bed, but he's up there in this outfit bending bars.
Yeah, you know what? I heard he's not actually the original Thor.
No, he's not. He's not.
He bought that character from the original Thor, who's like a Chippendales guy or a male stripper or something, or a male Vegas dancer or something like that.
Close enough.
Very bizarre. But I remember that video, Gotta Keep the Dogs Away, of that song. And it was hilarious.
That was like funny. U68 days.
It was like Manowar, but not serious.
Yeah.
I love shit like that. I love shit like that, like the Mentors. I love people who take the piss out of what they're doing, but I don't think Thor knew that he wasn't being taken seriously. Yeah. Whereas the Mentors
knew what they were doing.
Clearly were fucking with you. And quite frankly, I found them revolting when I first heard them. But, after a year or two, I just loved the shit out of them.
They just grow on you. And how did we get here when we started with David Bowie?
We just go, man. Fuck that. Who needs a goddamn format, That's for squares. Anyway, but it's a continuum. Music is a continuum.
Exactly.
And sometimes David would take the piss out of the audience every now and then. It wasn't all serious all the time. He did a covers album. I think it was called Pinups. Yeah.
Yeah. But he was smart. He knew when to call an end to Ziggy, and he did it locally at, I guess, a Hammersmith show in London. And, he milked the shit out of it. He knew how to get press.
Videotape of that.
Do you?
By the way, yeah. It's not like it's some private secret. It was like commercially released. He announces it. This will be the last show of the Spiders from Mars. And this will be the last show we'll ever do. Yeah. He actually says it.
Here it is.
And it was awesome concert. And if I have, for you kids who haven't seen it, get it, first of all, and then look for the song Width of a Circle. Mick Ronson goes into a guitar solo that literally, it's one of those things where if you're a music lover, you will almost be in tears when you hear it.
I think he was relatively underrated for a long time. Only over the last 25 years has he really been gradually respected.
If you look at the clothes he was wearing, you can kind of understand. Dressed up like one of the Three Musketeers.
But you know what?
Makeup on.
They were hired help. They were hired members. They weren't even recognized as co-workers of David. They were hired guys, so they had to wear what they were more or less told to wear.
I think Mick Ronson was his right-hand man, because I understand Mick was far more involved in arrangement of songs than people know.
You read Woody's book. Everybody was pretty much a higher position. Of course, Ronson was higher on the totem pole as the others, but you still had to answer to David, and the buck stopped with David.
It makes sense. Yeah, I guess, hey, we're back to, singers ruling the goddamn band. But anyway, it was his act, so.
Exactly.
You got to give him an Ace Frehley pass, right? So I'm going to keep going back to Ace Frehley. Fuck you guys. I love the man.
That's probably going to be our first T-shirt for the podcast show.
Give Ace Frehley a pass. Yeah. Okay, well, you know what? Someone's going to do it. Yeah. So, I mean, another guy who has, I guess you'd say, mutated and changed himself over the years. He, not to the extent that Bowie did, but Dave Mustaine. Now, a lot of people hate him. And that's just how it is.
You know what? I think early on he was rather obnoxious in his persona, and I think that's had a lot to do with getting kicked out of Metallica and his personality, and because he was drinking and using at the time, so he thought this was supposed to be who he was. But after he finally looked towards recovery and sobriety, I think he realized how much of an asshole he was, and it had a lot to do with the drugs. So he went through a growing process. But I also see him still having like rants and stuff like that still happening.
Oh, I loved it. I actually became aware of Metallica before their first album was out. And I think it was the week that he got kicked out. And it was just demos circulating around. And I remember listening to some like really hard to find college radio station where the guy was telling all this inside shit. Yeah, Dave Mustaine is going to start his own band and it's going to be called Megadeth, and he promises that it's going to be harder and faster than Metallica. So I went back and listened to early like No Life Till Leather demos, and I was like, yeah, David wrote all that shit. He wrote that shit. And then I'm hearing all this bad stuff about Dave, and the worst people made it sound, the more I liked him. Because you know what? Everybody likes someone who's completely unhinged and doesn't give a fuck. And it doesn't matter what chemicals are flowing through his brains that are causing that. People like someone who's a loose cannon. And that was my attraction to Dave Mustaine. He was a loose cannon. Plus, the shit he was writing was like, who's doing this? Who else is doing Honestly, the only group at the time, and I know we're probably getting a little too metally for some of you, but fuck it, I don't care. Exodus. That's it. I liked Exodus and Metallica and Megadeth in those days.
Bonded by Blood!
Hey. Bonded by Blood is a thrash classic, and it's in the Holy Trinity.
I remember playing with the guys in Exodus after Paul Baloff left. But I always felt Paul Baloff was like a canned vocalist, because if you really listen to that Bonded by Blood album, he's not raising his voice and yelling. He's just going into the mic and trying like this.
Well, I don't got the behind the scenes. I know from my perspective, listening to the album, it sounds like this guy's going to collapse his lung any second now.
To me, it sounded like he was just going up to the mic, talking at this same level.
Really?
Like Gargamel voiceovers for Smurfs.
I always heard these rumors after the fact that he had lost his voice or something was wrong with him.
I could see that happening on tour, but I really felt that recording, he was not pushing it out and really yelling it out the way most vocalists were. That's my opinion.
Hey, now I'm probably going to listen to it with a different ear now. I just remember, for me, Bonded by Blood, the first Metallica album, those two landmark. And then, of course, the first Megadeth album, which, quite frankly, one side of it was awesome and the other side of it was okay.
I remember listening with a friend to a test pressing of Bonded by Blood. So it's like we got it before it was released.
Okay.
And then I got a David Mustaine story too.
Oh.
When I used to work at Tunnel,
Always, yes, please.
Dave Mustaine and Dave Ellison come in that night. Of course, Ellison at the time was in a pretty lucid frame of mind, but Dave was a little drunk. So I took them downstairs because the downstairs bar was closed that night, and I was trying to take them downstairs, and we were trying to talk about music and stuff like that. But it really didn't work out that way because Dave was not in the frame of mind to really do all that. I felt like as I was talking to him, I was getting that, yeah, man, yeah. You know, like not really listening, but, you know, yesing you to death type of shit. But I felt Dave Ellison was a pretty more genuine guy at the time. Mm-hmm. But, you know, I know what it's like to be on that side that Dave must have been feeling that night. But, and I'm sure they don't remember me either. You know what I mean? But, it was one of those.
Yeah, I used to hear a lot of weird rumors, and I don't know how true any of this shit was, but I used to hear rumors about, like, Dave Mustaine getting drunk and trying to smack somebody in the head with his BC Rich, like literally swinging it like a tennis racket into the first row of the audience.
Man, that's a good way to catch a manslaughter charge.
You know, I don't know if that, I swear I don't know if that's true or not, and I did go to see them on their, when they toured on their second album, though. Peace Sells.
Yeah, I want, when you say something like that, I wonder how much of that goes into the press just to sell a ticket.
I didn't hear it in the press. I heard it word of mouth. So that's why I call, like, I don't know if it's bullshit or not.
No.
But
you could say that about the peak of Jane's Addiction. Everybody thought they were all junkies and had AIDS, but they were selling out the Garden.
I did confess, I did.
So they were selling out the Garden.
But I got a soft spot in my heart for Dave Mustaine because he in an interview with Kick-Ass magazine, I remember him mentioning Frank Zappa. Specifically, he was like, yeah, I want to play some stuff that's very stylized and hard to play like Frank Zappa. And I was like, really? This coming from a thrash guy? Well, and maybe he's broader minded than I thought.
I don't think of Megadeth as having the same influential punch as Metallica did. You know, that's...
Oh, without a doubt, they didn't. They were...
By getting rid of him, they definitely did themselves a service and were able to go on to bigger and better things.
Yeah.
Because you know, you didn't need someone like this whose personality was going to take things away from the image of the band.
He changed a lot, though. I mean, think about...
No, he grew up a lot within that
each guitar player in the band, their sound changed. Like, when he had... My favorite period was when he had Chris Poland in the band.
Okay.
Once Chris Poland got fired, or left or whatever, there's this second period where it's a little sketchy, right? And people have differing opinions on some of those albums, like Risk. And then he goes and gets Marty Freeman, and all the kids who are under 30, who are under 40.
That were crazy.
Marty Friedman. That's it. That's my shit. Nothing else matters. Marty Friedman's the greatest guitar player that's ever been in that band.
He doesn't have a great stage name, but yeah, he's a fantastic guitar player.
And no shitting on Marty Friedman. I love the guy when he was in Cacophony. Which was a sort of instrumental speed metal-y thing he did with Jason Becker.
I always thought it was pronounced "cough on me." No, I'm kidding. No, Cacophony.
Those two guys together were amazing, and Marty Friedman has a very unique way of playing, an approach, but he was, that second or that third incarnation didn't affect me that much, and I already knew about Marty Friedman, so I wasn't taken by it as I was by the more raw, punk-inspired thing that the original Megadeth was doing. And, well, I don't even want to go into the post Marty Friedman stuff because it's gone off. It's gone off.
What do you mean you don't want to go through the Marty Friedman period? We did the others.
I don't know. I don't know what's going on with him anymore. But I mean, I've tried. Don't get me wrong. I will say this without any reservation. I own and have purchased every single Megadeth album ever. I've listened to all of them, and I want to like them. I want to, but I can't. I just can't.
There it is.
He's changed a lot, man. And I just, this same thing happened with Bowie though. There's a period after which I can no longer listen to Bowie.
Well, what about
That's
this?
just me.
The last of David Bowie, this release that came out
Black
on
Star?
the days of his death. What'd you think about that?
I will tell you a story about Black Star. It came out, and one of my closest friends, who's a singer, and he was like texting me all day. Have you heard this? It's the greatest fucking thing. It's amazing. And I'm like, okay, have you heard of the word hyperbole? Because you're using it a lot right now. I got it. I listened to it and liked one song a lot. I think it was called Sue in a Season or something like that. And the rest of the album, I just did not understand why people liked it.
It seemed very, very deep, depressing, and a little too artistic for me with the videos that I saw.
I saw the videos. I heard the music. To me, there's no such thing as too artistic for me. I just felt like the quality of the songs was okay. I'm gonna piss some people off, and I'm sorry, but opinions are like assholes. We all got them, right? So I just felt like the quality of some of those songs was not up to par, and they weren't catchy, and they didn't do anything for me except for the maybe one or two songs.
Yeah, I guess you had to really love the guy, if you will, because
I do,
and I did too. But when I saw it, I didn't see it before he passed away. I saw it after he was dead. So I'm watching all these videos, and I'm saying to myself, it's too artistic. Wow, David's dead.
Yeah, yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, but to be honest with you, I don't know what the album was before Let's Dance, but around that period, I stopped listening to him and didn't give a fuck about him ever since.
Put on your red shoes and dance the blues.
And I don't even have that album, by the way.
To the sounds we're playing on the radio.
What he did before that, his legacy is so big and broad. That's enough. It's enough that I can go back and listen to Ziggy or Aladdin Sane or The Man Who Stole the World.
Yeah, it's more time.
That's so much right there that I'm good. I don't need any more. And all the stuff experimenting, I appreciate it. You got some great players. You did some great stuff. I did love Tin Machine, but I don't consider that to be a David Bowie joint. I consider that to be a group effort.
Yeah, collaborative effort as a band with him in.
Yeah, and that was the last thing. That's honestly the last thing he was involved in that I gave a fuck about. And I tried to listen to the more electronic stuff, and I can't find my. But the one odd every now and then, he'd do something, a song. One song, like Dead Man Walking, where I go, okay, good song. Rest of the album, don't want to hear it. Yeah. Good song though. But the man kept trying. He kept trying. And he was, for me, I don't know about you, Ed, but to me, that is an artist who straight up was in it for the art.
No, he was in it to win it. And that's how I say, and I think that's why we can applaud the life of David Bowie, because he never gave up. He never quit.
Fucking A.
You can't be a #1 selling artist every fucking thing you do, but you keep going. You fall down, pick yourself up, brush yourself off, get back in the game.
I think if it wasn't for him, we would not have had a Prince. Hello.
Yep. I totally agree with you.
And I think if it weren't for him, a lot of the punk movement wouldn't have happened.
Mm-hmm. I don't think guys like Elton John would have been able to come out as early as they did.
I definitely don't think the new wave movement would have existed without him.
No.
So yeah, I can't really name a single artist who affected more genres for as long a time as him.
Look at all that synth pop from the 70s into the 80s, the new romantic scene that bred people like Boy George and Culture Club or Spandau Ballet.
Yeah, somebody's gonna have to apologize for that shit.
Yeah, so we got to get somebody.
I demand an apology.
But I'm using it as an example. This guy, you know, whether it was straight up rock and roll or even a little bit of metal to straight up songwriting and pussy rock and synth rock and
pussy rock is a genre.
Yeah,
somebody should have told me. Yeah. I gotta go buy some.
Well, I mean,
pussy rock.
Any band that someone goes, yo, that dude's a pussy, you know, I guess gets categorized under pussy rock.
Don't get me started.
So I guess even on somebody's label, probably Leeway is pussy rock, because Eddie Leeway's a fucking pussy. You know?
And with that, let's go get a drink.
All right. This is the Eddie Leeway podcast show with Eddie Sutton and Doc Ock. Next round's on me.
Water. I need some water.